po.
Okay, so good morning everyone. So I'm not feeling well actually, no? But everything you need to know about international human resource management, of course, bears both functional and strategic resemblance to human resource management, no? Functionally, it performs almost the same set of activities as human resource management like recruitment, selection, performance, management, no, compensation, training, industrial relations, career management, and others. Strategically, international human resource is closely linked to the business strategy of the organization. So, international human resource management as performing HRM and its related activities and arranging for related Okay. Of course, with related and necessary immigration facilities for prospectives and current expatriate employees, no, by organizing, operating in domestic and foreign countries. So, in this topic, no, our presenter will be able to discuss about the, syempre, introduction of IHMR, no, o M, no, the definitions, of course, the concepts, no, the needs, the rules, the activities, some models, recruitment policy, and challenges and issues of the international human resource management. Again, as I mentioned earlier, no, international human resource management differs from domestic human resource management because it's primarily in terms of the complexity, no, associated with managing people across national boundaries. Okay, and to give us more details about the topic, let us all welcome our presenter. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning. Sorry. Good morning, Doc Abante. Good morning, classmate. Today, I'm going to discuss part 9, which is, ayun nga po yung diniscuss ni Doc, is yung international HRM. And I'm J. Precious Pagapong, your presenter for the day. So, part 9 consists of 3 chapters. First is the international HRM framework. Second is the practice of international HRM. And the third one is managing expatriates. So in these chapters, chapter 37, we will discuss the definition of international HRM, internationalization and globalization, contextual factors affecting international HRM, cultural differences and institutional differences, convergence and divergence, and the factors affecting convergence and divergence. International HRM takes place in a framework consisting of the international scene in general, the implications of the different approaches to international strategy, and the specific contextual factors associated with differences in culture and associations. Ayan, as discussed a while ago by Doc, international HRM is just like an ordinary HRM. Pero since international level siya, dito pag-aaralan natin yung how yung approach ng HRM and strategy on an international level. So since international siya, so different countries yung involved. So malaking factor dito yung culture and yung cultural and institutional differences. So what is international HRM? It is concerned with human resource management policies and practices in multinational enterprises. Its aim is to ensure that an international organization attracts, deploys, develops, and engages the quality of people it requires to achieve its strategic goals. So yung international HRM, ito yung ginagamit na technique ng employer to manage yung human resource aspect nila sa international operation. Kasama dito yung acquiring ng tao, pagtitraining, appraising, and yung pagko-compensate and pag-attend dun sa mga needs ng mga expatriates. So sa international HRM, malaking factor and challenges dito yung distance. Pero another issue is yung political, legal, and economic differences ng iba't ibang country and ng mga tao. So, international scene, globalization and internationalization. Internationalization is the process of international economic integration in worldwide markets. Its focus is the expansion of the client base of a local business in the global or international market. Results include increasing the influence of the enterprise of a local market in influencing globalization. While globalization is the development of a single international markets for goods or services accompanied by an accelerated growth in world trade. Its focus is the exchange of products and services from the interaction of local markets in one global market. Results include decrease of global market trade barriers, emergence of free and open markets, mobility of free trade capital increase and uncontrollable migration, decline of local cultures and identities, and negative effect on the small local business. So, yung globalization, ito yung process ng company to bring its new business to new locals. Whereas yung internationalization naman, it refers to the act of designing a product or services in a way that makes the expansion into international markets a simpler process. Sorry, sir. So next is the international HRM strategies. Ay, sorry, nawala yung screen. Ito. So, multinational companies, ito yung mga companies na may direct operations in a single country. Pero hindi siya, however, it is usually not a very large number. Multinational companies have a centralized structure with a head office in the home country. So, sa multinational company, ang strategy is building strong local presence through sensitivity and responsiveness to local needs. So, sa global naman, these companies work to have a foothold in a large number of countries. Large number naman yung kanina, yung multinational, not very large number. Usually larger than a multinational, ayun nga po. They do not follow the system of having an official head office. So sa global naman, international HRM strategies building cost advantages through controlled global scale operations. International operations of such companies lie in one single home country as the base center. These companies only export or import products from the home country. The offices hence only exist in the home country and there is no foreign direct investment in the other countries. So sa international, exploiting parent company, so kasi nga naglalay lang in single home country yung base center, exploiting parent company knowledge and capabilities through worldwide diffusion and adaptation. Transnational, these companies are operating in multiple countries. Meron silang foreign direct investment. Such companies follow a flexible approach, understanding and adapting to the local culture and demand of each country. Dito naman, creating a new organizational model by simultaneously developing global competitiveness, multinational flexibility, and worldwide learning capacity. So dito sa apat na international HRM strategy, mas sinasuggest nila yung transnational kasi mas ito yung nag-a-adapt dun sa local culture ng country. So next is the contextual factors affecting international HRM. So kanina dun sa sa international HRM framework, binanggit na tong contextual factor which is the cultural differences and institutional differences. First, according to Briscoe et al., many of the most important and difficult challenges to the conduct of international HRM stem from the differences encountered in various countries and multinational enterprises' cultures. Variation in national cultures are reflected in people's values, beliefs, and behavior patterns. To heel trap naman, following HRM areas that may be affected by national culture, decisions of what makes an effective manager, giving face-to-face feedback, readiness to accept international assignments, different concepts of social justice, pay system, and approaches to organizational structuring. To Gerhardt, a misfit between national culture and management practice will reduce effectiveness. So since different countries yung involved, iba-iba talaga yung culture. So para sa kanya, malaking misfit talaga yung cultural differences para maging effective yung goal nung mas maging ineffective, mas malas yung effectiveness ng pag-reach ng goal ng organization. To top speed, according to his research, suggested that cultural consisted of shared values and involved the collective mental programming of people in an environment and broad tendencies to prefer certain states of affairs over others. He concluded that the cultural values within a nation are substantially more similar than the values of individuals from different nations. So sa cultural differences naman, ito yung mga diverse behaviors, beliefs, customs, traditions, language, and expressions that are characteristic to groups of people of a particular race, ethnicity, or national origin. Example na lang dito yung example dito, kunyari sa Europe, parang doon, parang doon hindi na nila kinakailangan na i-mention yung mga ginawa mong tama dun sa organization. Parang hindi nila kailangan ng approval. While dito sa atin, so parang we love to hear compliments, ganon. Parang mas gusto natin na ina-appreciate ng employer natin yung ginagawa natin. Yung talagang vocal sila sa pag-express nung na-appreciate nila. Samantalang sa ibang country, parang hindi na kailangan. Parang mas focus nila kung ano yung nagawang mali. Kasi tayo dito parang ganun din, pag mali mas nakikita ng employer, tapos pag tama parang hindi naman na-appreciate. So in Asian countries, parang like China, another example is kagaya sa Asian countries, yung China, parang heads of companies are inclined to see employees as member of the family but in turn demand much of them. So madaming Chinese companies dito sa Philippines. So parang personally na-experience ko yung magtrabaho sa Chinese owner. Parang ayun nga, parang feeling nila para sa akin lang parang feeling nila parang ayun nga, so much time yung dinedemand nila sa yung trabaho. Another example is yung hierarchical countries like Saudi and Russia. Yung authority is clearly resides on top managers, while yung egalitarian countries, managers emphasize working empowerment and soliciting input. So sa cultural factors din, nagbavari din dito yung decision making. since iba-iba nga ng behaviors, beliefs, customs, traditions. So, institutional differences include the role of the state and financial sectors, employment, law, national systems of education and trainings, and employment expectations. Other local factors in the environment include differences in the centrality of markets, institution regulation, collective bargaining, and labor force characteristics. So yung kung kanina yung cultural differences, parang yun yung mga, para sa akin, yung internal factors since yung mga personal beliefs naman natin yan. So while yung institutional differences, nag-aaray siya dun sa economic, finance, political, administrative, cultural technologies, and cultural and technological differences between the home and the host country. So, eto naman, nagva-vary naman siya dun sa kung nasaang bansa yung company. So, convergence and divergence. International HRM involves the need to judge the extent to which, on the one hand, an organization should implement similar policies and practices across the world, or convergence, or on the other hand, that it should allow overseas subsidiaries to adopt their own practices or at least modify the policies and practices of the parent company. So yung convergence, it puts forward that international HRM practice are becoming more similar to achieve yung company goal. While yung divergence naman, management, parang pinapanindigan niya na yung management, yung international HRM talagang will remain distinct from one another despite globalization. So, to put simply, yung convergence implies two forces are moving together, while divergence is generally means two things are moving apart. Yun. Nature of convergence and divergence. To Frenkel and Pitts, describe a globalization-induced trend towards increasing convergence, which finds a counterbalance in national culture. The role of the nation and national industrialization strategies. To Brewster, remark that strategic alignment, convergence, and localization can be regarded as opposite extremes as a continuum. Pag sinabi nating continuum, continuous sequence siya. Brewster et al., the wider convergence-divergence debate also tends to assume that the HRM system as a whole has to converge or remain divergent, rather than considering whether some parts of the overall HR system might be converging in some regions or geographies while other parts might be diverging. So, ina-associate din yung convergence and divergence into centralization and decentralization, but there are differences. And si Haxiansky and Bakhanan, in-explain niya na yung concentration ng centralization is the authority and responsibility for decision making in the hands of managers at the top of an organization, centralized. And decentralization involves authority and responsibility for decision making being dispersed more widely downwards and given to the operating units, branches, and lower level management. So yung centralization and decentralization, ang main concern niya is yung decision making, degrees of autonomy, and organizational structure. While yung convergence and divergence are primarily about the dissemination or absence of dissemination of specific policies and practices. Factors affecting convergence and divergence. There are 4 factors. First is the orientation of international firms, drivers for convergence, dissemination of headquarter policies and practices, and choice of convergence. First is the orientation of international firms. According to Perlmutter, there are 4 types of orientation. First, yung ethnocentric, in which fundamental decisions are made at headquarters and foreign subsidiaries possess little autonomy. Polycentric orientation, in which headquarters consider subsidiaries, as independent entities and autonomy is granted to a great extent. Regiocentric, in which subsidiaries are interconnected and regulated by a regional center. And lastly, yung geocentric orientation, in which headquarters and foreign subsidiaries are integrated worldwide and interdependent to a high degree. So, ang example niyan is yung development ng international firm. Parang sa una, ina-adapt nila yung ethnocentric sa sa staffing policy by sending out managers to the host country subsidiaries to transfer parent company culture and to ensure conformity with financial and organizational procedures. After nung ethnocentric, next naman is yung polycentric staffing policy to management promoting as confidence grows home country national to senior positions in their subsidiaries. As the company becomes even more international, dito niya na ina-adapt yung regiocentric and geocentrics. Policy based on developing the best person for the job, irrespective of his or her nationality. Drivers for convergence. There are three listed drivers for global integration of convergence. First is yung environmental drivers. These include the removal of trade and investment barriers, the deregulation of markets, the emergence of global customers, the spread of new web-based technologies, and the opening up of developing countries such as Brazil, China, and India. These drivers force companies to adopt a globally integrated approach to managing business. Second is yung strategic drivers, which capture the business advantages that result from global integration, such as global branding, worldwide standardization, the ability to respond quickly to competitive challenges by redeploying resources. And lastly, yung structural drivers in the form of global structure based on international product divisions that promote integration. And according to Lertsun and Landeta, he explained that organizational practices should be viewed as valuable resources and capacities that it is useful to replicate and exploit throughout the organization. So, dissemination of headquarter policies and practices. According to Lertsun and Landeta, the transferability of best practices is conditional both on cultural institutional factors, yun yung contextual factors kanina, as well as organizational ones. So, depende din yung pag-disseminate ng policies and practices dun sa contextual factors. Sa institutional sa institutional differences, theory sees that the institution of a country as the determining agents of the dissemination. While yung sa cultural approach naman, yung point of view of differences in social values and customers. So therefore, national management methods may be embedded in their institutional and cultural content, which limits the possibility of a cross-national learning from so-called practices. So lastly is yung choice of convergence. To Harris and Brewster, he listed following factors affecting the choice of convergence. First is the extent to which there are well-defined local norms. The degree to which an operating unit is embedded in the local environment. Third is the strength of the flow of resources, finance, information, and people between the parent and the subsidiary, the orientation of the parent to control, the nature of the industry, the extent to which it is primarily a domestic industry at local level, and the specific organizational competencies, including HRM, which are critical for achieving competitive advantage in local environment. Next is the pressure of convergence. To Brewster, he claimed that convergence may be increasing as a result of the power of the markets, the importance of cost, quality, and productivity pressures. So yun yung nakaka-pressure sa convergence. The emergence of transaction cost economies, development of like-minded international cadres, and benchmarking best practice. To Isidore naman, internationalization offers fair manifold advantages such as realizing economies of scale and scope, learning from international markets, exploiting interrelations between business segments and geographic areas. To Brewster, it is quite possible for some parts of an HR system to converge while yung other part may diverge. To Styles, organizations seek what works, and for HR in multinational companies, the range of options is limited to a few common practices that are believed to secure high performance. And to Rayleigh and Williams, asserted that the reason for commonality and certainly justifiable organizations may not have any real choice, especially in protecting corporate reputation. So advantages and disadvantages of convergence. Convergence can ensure that established good practice in their parent company, which has demonstrably contributed to success, can also contribute to the success of foreign subsidiaries. It can help also to ensure that global mindset exists that enables distinct units to work together to achieve a common purpose. So, according to Rayleigh and Williams, siya yung nag-indicate ng upside and downsides or yung advantage and disadvantages of what they called a one-country approach or yung convergence. So, yung upsides niya, it promotes common values, delivers consistent treatment to staff, export good business practices to all parts of the organization. Since one country approach siya, parang pare-parehas, common lahat, gives greater control over dispersed operation, provides cost control. While on the other hand, yung downsides niya is harmonization can stifle innovation. The center losses touch with the sharp end of the business. Ill-conceived policies may be subverted at a local level, and HR is a focus for frustration as agent of the corporate center. It does not easily sit with workforce segmentation. So, yung downside niya, since nagpo-follow lang siya ng one country approach, medyo mas napapabagal yung innovation napapabagal yung innovation ng convergence. Tapos, yung frustration nito is nandun lang sa HR since sila yung parang representative or agent ng corporate center. achieving convergence. According to Taib's proposition, that is generally easier to transfer strategies and policies than practices rather than trying to impose central policies as central practices. In certain cases, it may be preferable simply to set out broad policy guidelines expressing and underpinning the values that the parent company would like to be applied throughout the organization. Tulertsundi found that the practices that reflected the greatest differences between head office and affiliates were those associated with communication and participation. To Rayleigh and Williams, what HR might need to do is more carefully decide what is common and global versus what is different and local. So, si Lertsundi and Landeta, nag-set out din sila ng two considerations for those making decision on which HR system should be exported to their foreign subsidiaries. First, companies with effective HR system should transfer them to subsidiaries in the same way that they transfer other system. Second is yung cultural differences between the parent company's country and the foreign subsidiary should not prevent the export of the general principle of its HR system. So convergence can be achieved by exercising centralized control, forcing subsidiaries to install the HR policies and practices of the parent company. But managers in subsidiary companies may seek to maintain as much independence as possible and therefore block or at least dilute attempts made by the headquarters to enforce its policies. So yung mga subsidiary, parang pwede pa din silang mag-seek nung independence, parang magkanya pa din sila dun sa headquarters nun. So next is chapter 38, the practice of international HRM. Dito naman sa practice sa chapter 38, we will discuss the practice of international HRM, workforce planning, resourcing, talent management, international performance management system, reward management, multicultural working, role of the international HR function. First is practice of international HRM. The practice of international HRM is concerned with the HR activities conducted by multinational company in managing people throughout the organization. Kasama dito yung headquarters staff, yung home country national and yung third country national, and yung expatriates. Workforce planning. Dito sa workforce planning, dito yung sineset out yung pag-resource ng people, kung ilan yung kailangan, yung pag-forecast, yung pag-prepare, prepare action plans for recruitment, in selection, and yung assignment. Resourcing involves also Next is yung resourcing. Resourcing in an international organization means making policy decisions on how the staffing requirement of headquarters and the foreign subsidiaries can be met, especially for managers, professionals, and technical staff. So sa resourcing, it involves attraction and recruitment of individuals into the right role at the right time and cost. It's about the relevant workforce planning data yung kanina, and knowing the right sourcing approaches and digital tools to tap into diverse candidate pools. So, kanina na-discuss na din natin to yung sa orientation of international firms. Ito yung mga kanina yung sa factors of affecting convergence and divergence, na-discuss na din to, pero mas elaborate natin dito. So, 4 types of orientation in international firms by Perlmutter. So, yun kanina yung ethnocentric. Sabi kanina, it is the fundamental decisions are made at headquarters and foreign subsidiaries possess little autonomy. The subsidiaries are likely to be managed by staff from the parent company. So, sa ethnocentric, subsidiary must comply with default policies and procedures of headquarters. So, ibig sabihin, company does not adapt its product to the needs or wants of the other countries they operate in. There are no changes in product specification, price, or promotional strategy. Management believes that dito sa ethnocentric, management believes that employees native to the home market can do a better job driving the company forward overseas than their non-native counterparts. So, may mga benefits din yung ethnocentrics. First is yung coordination. So, since mas pinapaniwalaan ng management na mas okay yung native employee nila kaysa dun sa non-native, mas coordinated. Parang mas nagre-result siya sa coordination between yung company at saka yung mga employee. So, cost-effective din siya since there is a very little change in terms of product features, price, or promotional strategies. The business can also avoid the expenses associated with adapting products for various international markets. And it also benefits from expansion capacity. The ethnocentric orientation may also be used by companies that are making their first foray into other country. The approach allows them to establish new production facilities and launch product with relative ease. So, next is yung polycentric orientation. Dito naman sa polycentric orientation, marketing strategies are based on the economic, political, or cultural disparities of the countries. Polycentric, siya naman yung opposite ng ethnocentrism, in that business seeks to do things the local ways to do. So, third is yung geocentric orientation. Headquarters and foreign subsidiaries are integrated worldwide and are highly interdependent. So sa geocentric approach, benefits niya is yung global expertise. Since yung geocentric orientation, it is tend to be a large corporation with similarly large ambitions. To achieve their goals, this corporation can establish a pool of senior executives with industry experience and contacts around the world. Dito, employees are hired based on their skills and abilities and not on their physical location. So another benefits of this orientation is agility. With a core unified strategy and assembled team of competent individuals, the geocentric orientation enables companies to be more agile and responsive to change. Yung geocentric, it is also easier to execute. The geocentric orientation is also easier to execute since there is one strategy and not several more intricate strategies. Many companies will simply replicate their domestic strategies abroad with very little customization while less sensitive to specific cultural needs. Mas cost-effective din tong geocentric orientation. And lastly, yung regiocentric orientation. Regiocentric orientation, subsidiaries are interconnected and regulated by regional center. It is it Regiocentric orientation is the belief that countries existing in the same geographic region have economic, social, cultural, or political similarities. As a result, the strategies developed for one country are effective when deployed throughout. So, benefits naman ng regiocentric is effectiveness. So, the regiocentric approach occupies a favorable middle ground between the more specific polycentric orientation and the more general ethnocentric and geocentric approach. Companies tend to be more effective dito sa regiocentric orientation since they can cater to broader audiences across multiple countries without the inherent inefficiencies of catering to smaller or more localized consumer groups. Dito din sa regiocentric, since regulated siya ng regional center, mas nagbe-benefit din to sa cultural fit. So, recruiting employees from specific regions can offer a better cultural fit than taking a more general approach to recruitment. Advantages and disadvantages of using PCNs and HCN. So, yung PCN is yung parent company national. So, while yung yung HCN is yung home country national. So, ito yung mga advantages and disadvantages ng parent company national. Facilitates control and coordination, provides managers with international experience, provides people with the best skills for the job, promotes the dissemination of multinational companies' policies and values. Yung disadvantages niya naman, it limits the promotional opportunities of home country nationals. Expatriates may find it hard to adapt to the characteristic of the host country's culture and institution. Expatriates may impose an inappropriate management style based on that of their parent company. The remuneration of PCNs and HCNs may differ. Lack of continuity, the host country may resent and even limit the deployment of foreigners. So sa home country national, advantages naman niya is it is familiar with local culture, institutions, and legal requirements. Since no language barrier, mas nagpo-provide siya ng continuity, moral improve as HCNs see career potential, fits local government policies for employing national and reduces employment costs. So, disadvantages naman niya, unfamiliar with parent companies' practices and systems. Dissemination of headquarters practices more difficult, may not have the immediate skills required, and it is more difficult to exercise control from the center. So, ito naman yung types of international assignments. So, first is yung short term. Usually, naglalast lang siya ng 3 months. So, parang for troubleshooting, for troubleshooting, may project lang or stopgap measure or until a permanent arrangement can be made. So, extended naman, parang yung assignment niya din is like yung short term, pero ito mas matagal lang. It usually lasts up to 1 year. So, sa commuter naman, includes special arrangement where the person commutes on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to the place of work in other country. Rotational assignments in which employees commute from the home country for a short set period followed by a break in the home country. And yung virtual assignments where employee does not move to a host location but managers from home aspect of the operations in the foreign subsidiary. Use is made of communication technologies such as video conferencing. although the home-based employee may have to visit the host countries frequently. So, etong mga international assignment, kung mapapansin natin, parang ganito na lang yung ginagawa yung practice na ginagawa sa ngayon. So, since medyo mahirap din maghanap ng expatriates, eto na lang yung mga ginagawa. Kung kunyari ayaw mag-reside nung expatriate dun sa pupuntahan niyang bansa, parang binibigyan na lang din ng ito na lang yung alternative option. Although mas costly ito para sa company, pero mas okay na lang din kaysa yung mas magastos din kasi pag nagte-train ng expatriate. So mamaya explain ko din kung ba't mas magastos yung pag-hire ng expatriates. International talent management. So it is talent management is the process of ensuring that the organization has the talented people it needs to attain its business goal. So international talent management defined as the systematic identification of key positions which differentially contribute to the organization's sustainable competitive advantage on a global scale. The development of a talent pool of high-performing incumbents to fill these roles which reflects the global scope of the multinational enterprise. So bakit mahalaga yung yung talent management? And this is how employers recruit and develop workforce that is as productive as possible and likely to stay with their organization for long term. So yun nga, yung kanina sabi ko yung mga international assignment parang short term lang siya. So sa talent management, parang dito yung pag-recruit ng employer para mas makita nila yung mga potential na mag-i-stay dun sa organization, yung pangmatagalan. Significance of international talent management. So, ayun. Tuchis et al., talent has become a precious resource fought over by competitors in a global war of talent. The success of global business depends on recruiting the quality of management in the multinational companies. So, sobrang importante yung international talent management kasi dito din nakasalalay yung success ng global business. So, Tumelahi and Colling suggested that enabling high-performance HCNs to become senior managers improves the performance of an international business by being better able to respond effectively to the demands of local stakeholders, legitimizing the firm in the host country and providing incentives for retaining and motivating talent. The process of international talent management. The conduct of international talent management involves basically the same methods as those used in domestic setting. So, kagaya sa domestic setting, ito din yung methods na ginagamit. First is yung talent planning. Dito, yung kung ilan at kung anong talent people ang kinakailangan sa ngayon at kakailanganin pa in the future. Parang planning pa lang. How many, ganon, kung anong kinakailangan sa kinakailangang tao sa ngayon at sa mga susunod pa. Sa talent pool definition, dito naman, pag na-identify na kung ilan at kung anong mga talent yung kinakailangan, next na is yung talent pool management. The talent pool is filled mainly from within the organization with additions from outside as required. The pool is not managed rigidly. It can be expanded as contracted as demands for talent exchange, new members can be included and existing members removed if they are no longer eligible. So dito sa talent pool, pwedeng within the organization lang yung paghahanap pero pwede din dagdag ng galing sa labas kung kinakailangan. So pagka after dun sa talent planning at saka dun sa talent pool, dito na yung papasok yung identifying talent. Dito na yung assessment ng mga staff kung sino yung qualified at maisasama dun sa talent pool. So pag na-identify na, pag na-assess na, ito na yung next na yung recruiting talent. Bringing in talented people from outside the company or yung mga within the organizations. Next is yung performance management. So, syempre pag naka-recruit na, performance management naman. So, yung talent is hindi naman kailangan na kung ano lang yung nalalaman nila is doon na lang mag-i-stop. So, kailangan din na nire-review or ina-assess siya regularly. So, kaya meron tayong performance management. Para kung sakali na kailangan ng mga improvement, makapag-provide sila ng new learnings and trainings. So, sa management development and career planning, ito naman yung continuous program of developing the abilities of members of the talent pool. So after yung pag-assess ng performance, tas ito na yung continuous development nila. So, ito naman yung assignment or promotion. Talent pool members are assigned to positions in headquarters or as expatriates in foreign subsidiaries. Yung mga alternatively, they may be promoted within headquarters or a subsidiary. Although a fully formed talent management system, the talent pool is considered to be the major source for senior assignments or for promotions. People not actually in the pool may still be eligible. If no one is available in the pool, it may be necessary to recruit externally. Those assigned or promoted will still be included in the talent pool. So, reasons why global talent management often fails according to Melahi and Collins. First is subsidiary managers may believe that it is in their interest to keep their own best talent rather than bring them to the attention of headquarters or other subsidiaries. Second is decision makers at the center do not always have access to accurate information about the availability of talent elsewhere in the organization. Third is even when information is available, the sheer volume, diversity, and possibly unreliability of the data hinders the center's ability effectively to manage talent in subsidiaries. Nag-comment din dito si Sparrow et al. Sabi niya, yung coordination of international management strategies in highly decentralized multinational companies is more problematic due to greater tensions between the short-term needs ng operating companies at dun sa long-term strategic needs ng business. International performance management. Sabi sa process kanina, yung performance management daw ay hindi pwede na parang fix lang yung dun lang. Kailangan talaga na nire-review regularly at need ng development. Kaya meron tayong international performance management. It's basically contain the following elements which correspond to those found in domestic systems. Performance agreement, performance management throughout the year at ayun nga yung performance review. The effectiveness of international performance management is affected overall by the sheer complexity of international business and the distance separating headquarters and subsidiaries. Particular issues affecting international performance management are the increased difficulty in influencing and controlling line managers, iisa-isahin natin ito mamaya. Line managers, cultural differences, the problem of achieving consistent rating results, and the variable levels of maturity among subsidiaries. Approaches to international performance management. Yung first is yung total convergence or yung standardization. It is using the parents company scheme throughout the international organization. So yung convergence nga yung iisa lang yung sinusunod nila. Total divergence, localization, foreign subsidiaries use their own system. Kanya-kanya yung, parang kanya-kanya yung divergence. Partial convergence, foreign subsidiaries use a version of the parent company system modified to take account of local factors such as culture and work system. Alternatively, they ensure that their own system conform to policy guidelines issued by headquarters, possibly including certain requirements such as the design of the forms or methods of rating. And last is yung dual system using the headquarters scheme for expatriates and local, possibly partly converged schemes for home country and third country nationals. International performance management system. So sa performance agreement, the manager and the individual jointly decide on the goals that the latter is expected to achieve. This may be hard goals that define the results expected as far as possible expressed in quantitative terms, or soft goals that are qualitative and refer to behaviors or traits such as upholding corporate values, leadership, and interpersonal relationship and customer relation. So second is yung performance management throughout the year. This involves regular dialogues between the manager and the individual about the latter's performance, coaching, and taking action to improve performance. At yung performance review, a formal review of performance in achieving agreed goals and meeting competency requirements. Yung review, it provides the basis for a new performance agreement and for a program of development abilities. It may also inform performance related pay decisions. So sa performance, yung binibigay ng performance review, pwedeng bagong agreement, pwedeng for development or to enhance yung ability and skills. At pwede din performance-related pay decisions, yung parang incentives, ganon. International performance management issues. According to Briscoe and Schaller, problems with the choice of evaluator, example of this in the local or parent company, and that the person's amount to contact with the rate. The host country's perceptions of performance which may differ from those in the parent company. Problems with long-distance communication, inadequate contact between parent company rater and subsidiary company rater. Unclear or contradictory performance objectives for foreign operations, lack of understanding by the parent company of the foreign environment and culture, indifference to the foreign experience of the expatriates. So issues affecting international performance management. First is yung line managers. Line managers on whom the system depends lack the skill or the inclination to do it properly. So malaking issue affecting yung international performance management is first yung line managers. So syempre, dito naglalay yung skills and capability para magawa ito ng maayos. And next is yung cultural differences. So as discussed kanina, malaking factor talaga dito sa international HR and cultural differences. Next is yung rating problems. The achievement of reliable and consistent appraisal ratings in a domestic setting is difficult. In an international operation, it is virtually impossible. Care should therefore be taken in designing and interpreting ratings systems. It may be best to leave them to the local subsidiary and not to introduce them to a suspect universal system. So, malaking issue din dito yung ratings since syempre kung kunyari ikaw nagtatrabaho ka dun sa subsidiary, parang di naman kung sasali mo yung headquarters sa pagre-rate, parang medyo magkakaroon naman ng unfair results yun. Parang inconsistent yung magiging grade since hindi ka naman, although magkaparehas na company siya, parang magkaiba pa rin talaga pag iba din yung performance mo, iba din yung nakikita nung sa headquarters. So next is yung variable levels of maturity. The maturity of subsidiaries in terms of their productivity, ability to penetrate markets, availability of skilled employees, and work practices will vary, and it may be more difficult for some subsidiaries to meet the standards of performance expected by the parent company. So, reward management. International reward management involves the management of all aspects of rewards in organizations operating worldwide or at least in a number of countries. Traditionally, discussions of international reward strategies and practices have tended to focus on an elite of expatriate workers sourced from headquarter location and rewarded in isolation from local country staff. So, sobrang importante nung reward management sa international HRM. Since yung mga tao come and go sila, kailangan talaga na magbigay tayo ng magandang reward management kasi dito kung dito matitest dito maaano natin kung makakatulong ito para magbigay dun sa employee ng motivation at para mapakinabangan sila ng organization for long term. Reward management. To Stephen Perkins, achieving an appropriate global-local balance between global and local requirements in international staffing and reward has therefore become a much more strategic and challenging issue for HR and reward managers. To Baten and Leuven, the extent of centralization or decentralization of compensation policies and practices, balancing corporate and national cultures, the sustainability and span of global compensation policies, the choice of compensation instruments to be included in global compensation policies, global benchmarking, and measuring the efficiency of global compensation approach. Design of international reward system. To Bradley et al., corporate culture of the multinational enterprise, expatriates and local labor markets, local cultural sensitivities, and legal and institutional factors. To Sparrow, differences in international reward are not just a consequence of cultural differences, but also of differences in international influences, national business systems, and the role of and competence of managers in the sphere of HRM. But they point out that studies of cultural differences suggest that reward system design and management needs to be tailored to local value to enhance performance of overseas operation. So next is yung international reward strategy. It is concerned with the development of an integrated approach to building reward policies and practices across international boundaries. According to White, best practice tells us that global rewards must not be considered piecemeal. He explained that development of any reward program calls for an integrated approach whereby each individual element of reward supports the others to reinforce global organizational objectives. A global rewards philosophy and total rewards approach can facilitate alignment of an organization rewards with business strategy, focus employee on the business goal, and reinforce consistent pay practices. Next is international reward management objectives. According to Briscoe, ito yung mga objectives: attraction and retention of the best qualified talent to staff the multinational companies, attraction and retention of employees who are qualified for international assignment, facilitation of transfers between different locations within the MNC, establishment and maintenance of consistent and reasonable relationship between the compensation of employees at home and abroad, maintenance of compensation which is reasonable in relation to the practices of competitors yet minimize cost to the extent possible. So kung mapapansin niyo yung objectives ng international reward management is to attract, to facilitate, and to maintain. Parang dun lang siya naglalaro for attraction, for facilitation, and pag-maintain ng mga employee. Levels of convergence in reward management policy and practice. So, level 1, total convergence, central reward policies and practices have to be followed by each operating unit in accordance with a set of guiding principles. This may include a standard job evaluation scheme, uniform grid, and pay structure. Level 2 is yung partial convergence. Central reward policies are applied in some but not all aspects of reward management. Centralization may be limited to senior management or international staff. Reward policies and practices for local nationals are decentralized. So sa level 3, corporate job evaluation schemes and grade structures are recommended, but modification is permitted to fit local conditions. However, all local locations are expected to comply with the international guiding principles for reward. There may be centralized policies for senior managers, expatriates, and third country nationals, and some benefits may be standardized. But pay levels and pay progression incentive arrangements are determined locally. So sa level 4, total divergence, local companies have complete freedom to develop and apply their own reward policies and practices, although they may be made aware of the international guiding principle. Multicultural working. A fundamental feature of international operation is that multinational and therefore multicultural teams have to work together in foreign subsidiaries. There are 10 tips for managing a cultural team. Adopt a cultural lens. Be prepared to set aside tried and tested management techniques that may have served you well in the past. So first is yung parang dapat dito sa multicultural working parang sa yung pag-adapt is yung una sa mga adapting is one of the best tip na maibibigay. Dapat ready ka na i-set aside yung mga nalalaman mo na to adapt naman ng mga bago. invest in managing new starters' expectations. It allows more time for team formation, induction, and establishing goals. Third is build relationship across cultures. Ito yung find time for face-to-face meetings, social activities. Fourth is communication. Communicate across cultures. Keep in contact and always check the communications are understood in the way that was intended. Fifth is encourage participation in cross-cultural teams. Vary communication styles and method using visuals can help overcome language barriers. Motivate cross-cultural teams. Focus both on team and individual goals. Remember that rewards and incentive can be seen very differently. So, hindi porket na nagbibigay tayo ng reward and incentive, parang natatanggap na yun ng mga iba't ibang working group. Parang iba pa din since international HRM nga, parang iba-iba pa din yung pagtingin ng mga workers depende dun sa nakasanayan nila. So, seventh is management performance across cultures. Take extra care introducing performance management as one size does not fit all. So, ayun nga, yung pwede sa isa, yung mag-fit sa isa, pwedeng hindi dun sa isa, sa ibang tao. Raise cultural awareness and understanding. Bring people from different cultures together for a specific project and assignments to promote greater understanding. So, dito pwedeng magbigay ng common goal sa mga multicultural workers para magkaroon sila ng better understanding sa bawat isa. 9, manage cross-cultural conflict. Help people clarify their assumptions. Even understanding what the issue is can be difficult. And lastly, encourage ethical standards and in cross-cultural teams. Ways of conducting business can vary across geography, so provide clear company guidelines and be ready to deal with any ethical issues in a timely manner. So, what is the role of the international HR function? An international HR function is responsible for developing and operating a transnational HR system. As defined by FESTING, it is the sum of HRM policies and practices that a multinational enterprise uses to attract, develop, and maintain its human resources, including globally standardized and locally adapted structures and processes. To Briscoe et al., contribute as role ng HR function is to contribute an integral partner in formulating the global strategy for the firm. They develop processes and concepts for top management as they develop global strategy. Sila din yung nakakatulong sa top management to understand the people implications of globalization. Identify the key skills required in the global organization, both line and HR management, and share the responsibility for HRM with line managers. So, ito yung last chapter, Managing Expatriates. So, dito, didiscuss yung ano expatriates, how to manage expatriates, use of expatriates, ROI or return on investment on international assignments, the process of managing expatriates, resourcing, recruitment and selection policies, preparation policy, assimilation and support policies, career management, expatriate performance, and yung pay and allowances policies. So, what is expatriates? Expatriates originates from the Latin words ex, outside, which means outside of, and patria means one's country. An expatriate was defined by Lee and Donhui as any individual who relocates from his/her home base to an international location for business or work purpose and sets up temporary residence in the host country. So yung mga expatriates, sila yung employees na sinisend to work abroad on a long-term job assignment, such as employees who need to populate or kung kanyari may new office or senior managers who need to manage or set up a new branch. Why use of expatriates? To transfer business and technological know-how, to develop personnel, to facilitate and improve communications between subsidiaries and headquarters, to further a unified organizational policy. And to pin to organization, use international assignments mainly for subsidiary control and coordination, skills and knowledge transfer, and managers development. ROI on international assignments. So yung international assignments are investment in the use of human capital, which involves all costs as well as benefits. It is therefore advisable to calculate the return on investment that they generate. To Doherty and Dickman, ROI as the comparison of the financial and non-financial costs and benefits relative to the assignment purpose. To Collins and Scallion, outcomes can be measured on 4 criteria, which are assignment cost, earlier termination, expatriate performance, and repatriate turnover. The calculation of ROI on the employment of expatriate should be seen as an essential part of the process of managing them. So yung sa pagmamanage ng expatriates, parang tinitingnan din dito yung return on investment on international assignment. So syempre yung mga company nag-i-invest din sila doon sa tao bago nila ipadala abroad. So nagkakandak din sa pagkuha pa lang ng tao na incurred na tayo ng cost. So kailangan pa natin silang i-train, of course, so sa pagbibigay ng benefits para pumayag sila dun sa offer, yung mga benefits, yung mga extra pay. Of course, syempre pupunta sila sa ibang bansa. Sa ibang bansa, mas madami yung nai-incurred na cost. So importante dun sa organization na may return of investment din sila. So since 'di ba nga, so syempre may mga times na hindi naman nagtatagal yung expatriate. Kaya lang nakapag-invest na sila doon, wala naman magagawa yung organization if biglang umayaw na talaga yung expatriate. So how to manage expatriates? Pre-departure, planning the assignment, selecting the individual, administering the relocation program, and conducting preparatory training and development. So eto yung sinasabi ko, yung kung bakit kailangan ng ROI sa international assignment. Kasi dito pa lang sa pre-departure, nag-i-incurred na nung cost, yung sa pagpaplano pa lang, sa pag-select ng individual, yung sa pagre-relocate pa lang sa kanila, nag-i-incurred na tayo ng cost. Sa assignment, performance management, pay and benefits, family support, and preparation for repatriation or reassignment. And third is yung post-assignment, retention by reintegrating returning international assignees into organizational career system. Resourcing policies. Policies are required on the employment of local national and the use of expatriates for long period or shorter assignments. Expatriates may be required to provide the experience and expertise that local nationals lack, or at least for the time being, but there is much to be said for a long-term resourcing policy which states that the aim is to fill all or the great majority of posts with local people. So dito sa resourcing policies, meron tayong qualities and behavior. The qualities and behavior required for those who might work internationally. So, dito sa qualities and behavior, dapat marunong sa pag-resource, dapat marunong mag-recognize ng diversity of overseas countries. Dapat one of the qualities and behavior, accept differences between countries as a fact and adjust to these differences collectively. And that marunong din siyang mag-tolerate and adjust to local conditions and makapag-cope ng long-term with a large variety of foreign contexts. So next is yung alternative approaches to resourcing. Considering other forms of talent, locals and self-assigned individuals, and alternative forms of mobility. Example, business travels, virtual teams, short-term assignments, and commuting. Often equally effective and more compatible with individual interests. Recruitment and selection policies. People for international assignments can be recruited from within the company from a defined pool by identifying individuals with the required qualifications or internal advertisement. It may be necessary to seek recruits outside the firm. So kanina dun sa parang sa process ng talent management, ayun nga yung second dun is yung talent pool. Yung sinabi nga na pwedeng yung talent can be dun sa within the company lang, yung talent pool nandun lang sa company, or pwede din mag-seek ng recruits outside. Other sources of people, locals and self-assigned individuals, and alternative forms of mobility should be considered. The critical requirement that expatriates should meet is cross-cultural awareness, the ability to understand and work with different national cultures. It is important to be clear about what sort of people are required by reference to role specification to spell out the special qualities required for working abroad. So, sa role specification, dapat, according to Briscoe and Scholar, dapat at yung mga role specification, hindi lang dun sa mismong trabaho, di lang siya dun sa mismong trabaho nag-excel. Dapat, yung role niya din as a personal individual, kailangan din sa pag-recruit and sa pag-selection. Like being open-minded and flexible, cultural interest and meron siyang cultural interest and sensitivity, kaya niyang mag-deal with complexity, resilient, resourceful, optimistic, and energetic. Meron din dapat siyang honesty and integrity, stable personal life, and value-added technical or business skills. It is also advisable to select people who believe that an overseas assignment will be beneficial to them and who will be capable of working in a different culture. So, syempre, dapat pagka sa recruitment and selection policies, parang ang hirap naman kung parang napipilitan lang yung employee na magtrabaho sa ibang bansa. Dapat yung desire to work din nila dapat nandoon din. And lastly, to reduce the assimilation problems that can be faced by an expatriate when working in a foreign location, realistic previews of the conditions they will meet are necessary. So, preparation policy. The preparation policy for overseas assignment should include the provision of cultural familiarization for the country in which the expatriate will work. A pre-assignment training program should be provided that, as proposed by Tariq and Caligri, could be designed by taking the following steps. And eto yung 5 steps. First is yung identify the type of global assignment, technical, functional, tactical, or developmental or strategic executive ba siya. Second is yung conduct a cross-cultural training needs analysis covering organizational analysis and requirements. Third is establish training goals and measures. Fourth is develop and deliver the program. The content should cover both general and specific cultural orientation. And last is yung evaluate training given. Assimilation and support policies. So when we say assimilation, ito yung kung paano mag-fit in or kung paano i-acquire ng expatriate yung yung culture ng pupuntahan niyang country. Assimilation and support policies provide for the adaptation of expatriates to overseas posts and their progress in them to be monitored and reviewed. Progress may be monitored by conventional performance management processes, but additional information may be provided on potential and the ability of individuals to cope with overseas conditions. Mentors may be appointed to look after the interests of expatriates. So sa assimilation and support policies, meron ding study si Stroh et al. Na nagpapakita ng when employees accept an international assignment, they often return early for reasons such as difficulties in adapting to their home countries. Ayun, nahihirapan sila mag-fit in or i-acquire yung yung culture no napuntahan nilang bansa. For parang sa ibang bansa sa mga OFW, parang pagka-homesick. Ganon. Simulation and support policies. The specific support areas proposed by Wu and Ang, first is pre-departure preparation should cover cross-cultural training, adequate preparation, time and orientation visits to ease the transition process. Second is companies need to provide appropriate financial assistance to compensate for any hardship involved in expatriation. Third is companies need to reassure expatriates that a posting will help their career prospects. According to Farr et al., he advised that organizations may want to employ formal mentoring programs and ensure that the fit between the characteristic of the mentor and mentee is the most conducive to exchange of high-quality support. Next is career management. Special attention has to be paid to managing the careers of expatriates, either as part of their experience overseas or when they return permanently or for a period to their home country. To Briscoe et al., career management processes need to begin prior to an international assignment and be updated regularly. The assignment should be part of a larger plan for the firm so that repatriates return to positions that use their international learning and experience. Career management practices in an organization may be based on the methods described yung sa chapter 20 parang sa domestic HRM din. This includes the definition of common career paths, career counseling, and individual career plans based on the outcome of performance review. The responsibility of ensuring that these activities take place systematically for expatriates can be given to whoever is in charge of talent management or management development at headquarters. Mentors based at head office can be involved by keeping in touch with expatriates before they turn to the parent company. Next is yung performance management. Sa pag-assess ng performance management processes for expatriates need to take account of the challenges they face. To Kramer and Wayne produced the following list of expatriate success contracts. Performing well on the job, remaining in the assignment until the end of term, and adjusting to living conditions. To lead, develop, and tested an expatriate performance scale consisting of 6 factors. task performance, management and administration, teamwork and leadership, demonstrating effort, communication performance, and maintaining self-discipline. Ito naman yung mga factors affecting expatriate performance. Issues such as culture shock and cultural adjustment may diversely impact on the performance of expatriates. So, ayun nga, yung culture talagang malaking bagay dito sa international HRM kasi talagang nagkakaroon ng culture shock. So Pinto et al., socio-cultural adjustment and psychological well-being of expatriates and their families are preconditions of their success. To Solomon indicated that expatriate failure is largely due to firms' overemphasis on selection based on technical expertise rather than cross-cultural competence. Parang mas tinitignan yung technical expertise kesa dun sa cross-cultural competence. To Dickman et al. Provided evidence that organization seem to overestimate financial and family motives and undervalue career and work-life balance considerations favored by expatriates. And to Kim and Frowis, the individual's reluctance to accept an assignment might have influenced their efforts to adjust, their satisfaction with the assignment, and ultimately, their withdrawal attention. So, sabi nga kanina, parang sa pag-resource, parang dapat yung desire to work nandun na dapat hindi reluctant yung individual para magtrabaho siya sa ibang bansa kasi malaking sa pagiging reluctant pa lang nila, parang malaking bagay na kung dun pala makikita na kung magtatagal ba yung expatriate dun sa pupuntahan niyang bansa. Re-entry policies. Re-entry policies should be designed to minimize the problems that can arise when expatriates return to their parent company after a foreign posting. Policies should allow time for expatriates to adjust. To Doherty and Dickman, according to his research, parang turnover rates in the first period after expatriates return to the parent company average 15% compared with the normal rate of 7% for employees permanently working at headquarters. Turnover risks were due to repatriates having more marketable skills, lack of recognition by the employer of the skills acquired on assignment, or reduced responsibility or status on return. In-emphasize naman ni Sparrows that problems of managing repatriations are more complex in highly decentralized multinational companies than in the more centralized global company. Pay and allowance policies. The policy of most organizations is to ensure that expatriates are no worse off because they have been posted abroad. In practice, various additional allowances or payments, such as hardship allowances, mean that they are usually better off financially than if they had stayed at home. The basic choice for expatriate pay is whether to adopt a home-based or host-based policy. Home-based pay. The home-based pay approach aims to ensure that the value of the remuneration of expatriates is the same as in their home country. The home-based salary may be a notional one for long-term assignments. For shorter-term assignments, it may be the actual salary of the individual. So, yung remuneration, ito yung parang pinagsama-samang benefits at saka yung pay and benefits na pinagsama. Sa host-based pay, the host-based pay approach provides expatriates with salaries and benefits such as company cars and holidays that are in line with those given to national of the host country in similar jobs. This method ensures equity between expatriates and host country national. The host-based method is certainly equitable from the viewpoint of local national, and it can be less expensive than home-based pay. So, yung home-based approaches have been traditionally the most commonly used to compensate international assignees. Assignees on an home-based approach retain their home country salary and receive a suite of allowances. Yung kung ano yung pay nila doon sa headquarters, yun din yung magiging pay nila doon sa kung ano yung bayad dun sa kanila sa home country, yun din yung mare-receive nila with additional allowances lang. So sa host base naman, yung uses the market rate of the host country, yung host country, to determine the salary on offer. This could be the salary which local employees receive, or particularly in countries with large expatriate population. It could be based on the salary received by other expatriates in that country. So, ayan. That ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so thank you very much, Madam, no, for your well comprehensive discussions about the international human resource management. So as what you've mentioned earlier, no, of course, we need to consider some challenging exercise because of fairly obvious reason, no. Number one is the integration issues, no. It is difficult to push the right button, no, at the right time, especially when managers operate from headquarters separated by distance, no. Controlling operations operate from headquarters, no. Operations of subsidiary companies in different parts of the globe, no, through remote control can be really taxing, no, especially in coordinating effort and put some on track in sync, no, with the established policies of a company. Let's say, for example, Jollibee, no, Jollibee, they have a different branches in all over the world, no. So I don't know how it will be able, because again, when we say international human resource, every locations, no, country has their own, no, law, no, when it comes to labor law and so on, no. So heterogeneous functions, no, international human resource function and human resource can be very challenging when one takes a look at what international HR managers are supposed to handle, no, in terms of variety and complexity, including issues relating to international hiring, placement, culture-specific training, no, compensation relating problems, administrative services to expatriates, no, sinasabi ng reporter natin, carrying out appraisal from time to time, and offering growth, no, opportunities to the talented ones, no, putting out fires with labor, resolving conflict, and maintaining health labor management relations. So the employees sent abroad on assignment need to be taken care of in a special way, no. Their families, no, to need to be taken care of, including medical, educational, insurance, transportation benefits, and others. So human resource issues related to the above are going to be impacted by a variety of factors which demand a closer examinations, no. So some of the more basic issues involving impertinent areas of global human resource management are staffing, recruitment, and selection, of course, no, and training and development, no, compensation, performance appraisal, and a specific area deserving attention in international human resource management is the standard set by the international and regional organizations in regard to the use of human resources. Now, so the areas of activities in domestic and international human resource management are not dissimilar, but the international human resource management requires revamping and modifying them, taking into account the dissimilarities in the culture, so political, economical, legal environment of the countries in which they operate. Okay, so I think that's it.